for joining us for this talk about public art Abu Dhabi and communities. I will introduce myself. I'm the head of public art department in DCT. And I will also introduce the panel. We have Radhika Kimji, who's an artist based between Oman and Muscat in London. And we have also Shizad, who's also another artist who is based in London. Both artists actually have participated to our exhibitions, public art exhibitions in Abu Dhabi, and we will go through their artworks. And we also have Alia Lootah, who's a curator based in the UAE, and is currently a curator in the public art department. Sorry, the clicker. So I want to give you a brief introduction about our two main projects in public art Abu Dhabi. The first one is Manar Abu Dhabi. It's a light art exhibition. It happens at night only. And the first edition was in 2023. You can see one of the artworks there by Jumeiri, an Emirati-based artist. The exhibition was co-curated with Alia Lootah, who's here and will talk extensively about it, and Rim Fadda, who you also saw in the previous talk. And we also have the public art biennial. We had our first edition in 2024, last year. It was an extensive program with 80 installations, over 50 artists, all throughout the city center of Abu Dhabi, and will obviously Radhika participated to the biennial, and we'll talk a bit about her work. What is important for us is that we're putting together a new model for public art in general. We have temporary installations in the city, or for Manar in that case, in natural environments. It could be islands, oasis, and we don't necessarily keep these works. We have the communities really at the center of our programs. We work with the communities, we exhibit for the communities as well, and then eventually most of the works go. And some of them, however, are staying in the city. We do acquire them, small portions of them, and we leave a legacy that way, again, for the communities, for whoever lives in Abu Dhabi or passes through Abu Dhabi. And I will start perhaps with you, Alia. Perhaps to discuss a little bit about, how do you define the role of public art, in a contemporary city, I would say, like Abu Dhabi. We discussed a few examples, and I know one of the first one we wanted to discuss about was work by Farah Al-Qasimi. So please go ahead.
So the work of Farah Al-Qasimi here, this installation titled Homesickness, actually it's a very good thought to start with, because Farah is referencing public art in Abu Dhabi, and also like the aesthetics and style and subject of how public art was through this installation that is both sonic and sculptural. And this installation is a representation of 5 oysters representing the current rating, which was very important in UAE. And see in the UAE, current rating being a very important cultural and historic subject, but also was referenced a lot visually throughout. You can see it in jewelry, you could see it in public art. In this case, Farah was referencing a piece that was on the same road, Kirby Shore, where she then decades later brings in something that is more contemporary, but this also speaks about the history of the UAE. And the sound is really a sound that references also a chant that was hummed by the wives of the pearl divers and everyone who is in this business, leaving to the sea for 3 months, sometimes more. So the song says, "Tub ya bahar," and "Tub ya bahar" is addressed to the sea to bring back the loved ones. So it's a really a strong piece to bring back to the streets of Abu Dhabi.
And we're very happy to say that we acquired this artwork, and this artwork is staying in Abu Dhabi. after the biennial finished. That was a very important decision for us. Another topic, we discussed how the communities are at the center of what we do, and another work that was quite significant, also presented in our first edition of the biennial, was an artwork by Christopher Benton. Perhaps, Alia, you can tell us how the work the artist did with the communities, and how did it change the entire area?
Yes. So Christopher Benton created this massive installation that is in between the carpet souk. The carpet souk started in Abuظبي in the 70s, where the late Sheikh Zayed saw that the carpet merchants were selling carpets without any shading, and it was really harsh weather to be outside for long hours and not have actual shops or accommodation for these merchants. Given that it was really the beginning of the federation, and things were taking better shape, and Sheikh Zayed wanted to gift the merchants who live here these shops, and you can see in the floors above is where these merchants live with their families. So this is a very special place in Abuظbي. It's located in Mina Zayed, which is an important port in the center of the city. And here Christopher actually worked with the merchants to know their stories, to know their dreams, to know what would they like for this place to be and what is home for them. And so you can see in the drawings some reference the portraits of these merchants back home in Pakistan, or their dreams of how this area will be. And what's beautiful about it is it's astroturf, and it's designed by the artist and his team. And this created a very nice place for the merchants and people who are in the same community, and for people who live in Abuظbي to hang out and sit and talk. And we also had some really nice public programs with musicians and poets who recited poetry in different languages, South Asian languages, and it really brought people together. And this is one of the pieces that stayed beyond the exhibition timing to allow for it to have a longer life.
Exactly. So if you ever come into Abuظbي and visit, this piece is staying for 3 years. So please go to the carpet souk. It's a fantastic piece. Now, if I go to you, Shazad, you worked with us for the first edition of Manar, and perhaps we want to show the work that was commissioned. Perhaps you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, it was. It really came off the fact that I'd worked with Reem at Desert X, and we'd done an amazing work thinking about corals and the Red Sea and the particular impacts. And it was really a conversation I wanted to continue, being in dialogue with marine biologists based in the region. And so I think it was the team who connected me to Noura al-Mashouri at the Environment Agency. And we had an amazing conversation. And my previous works with corals had been with other species, but actually my personal favorite is the genus of Acropora. And the first thing Noura said to me was Acropora. And so it became this way of thinking about, and for all the coral works, it's about making the invisible visible. You're right by the sea, and actually, I mean, we did a lot of other work in terms of engagement around the piece, but actually this was one of the cases. It's a very public location. It's by the theatre at the end of the pier off the Corniche. And the install period was complicated and long. It's, I think sometimes with public art, you work really hard to make it look simple, and this was not a simple work, just from its, I mean, even just to put it simply, all the pieces that had to come together. So I was on the Corniche sweating for, I think, about 10 days. 2 weeks
that's
even.
Okay, 10 days.
2 weeks, 10 days, something like that. But it was really, that became, I'm always really obsessed with community engagement.
Yeah.
And, the work with Noura, with the Environment Agency to think about corals, the impacts locally, and bringing the awareness back to the community, because a lot of people in Abuظbي don't have the experience of the reefs that they're part of the archipelago. And
for me, this was a really, I always love the surprise in making public art. And actually, the install period was the best unintended engagement program ever.
Amazing.
It was really hard to actually install the piece because I kept having conversations with kids and families who kept saying, is this a real coral? And I have to say, no, this is larger than life size, but they're just over there. And they went, we have this. And it literally became, I was almost directly sharing my conversations with Nora back to the community on a
Amazing.
daily basis.
That's brilliant, Shazad. I think you had other images you perhaps wanted to
That just
to
shows
show.
some of the research that is Acropora in the waters around Abu Dhabi. And just talking about complexity, I mean, that's some of the modeling, late stage modeling we have to do to think about how all of these fit together. So you're really making a really complicated three-dimensional jigsaw with a kind of work like this.
Do you think it was your most site-specific commission? And do you think that was... I know you've done other
piece is my most
site-specific commission.
site-specific commission.
Yeah.
I think it's very much, for me,
It's an ethics of practice. Wherever I go, I found commissioners have actually sometimes been surprised that I don't just take the money and run and I want to hang out. Because I tend to stick around to the point where people are like, can you leave now? But for me, unless a piece resonates and I've made connections locally that justify the piece coming into existence, we kind of stop. Because if there's not a reason for something to be there and it's not creating a dialogue, I'm connecting with people and making, I think, maybe even to just, I talked about practical engagement, but it's also something meaningful in terms of opening a door that wasn't open before. And I think public art can really do that because also it's really democratic. For me, the success of this piece was the amount of people I spoke to in the install period. Actually, it was the resounding success.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And then Radhika, if you can also talk about your work. Oh, sorry, I don't know what's happening. We commissioned you for an artwork in Abu Dhabi for the Public Art Biennial in 2024. Do you want to discuss a bit and talk about it? And perhaps as well, what was quite interesting, this work was fabricated in Abu Dhabi and you were part of the process, I believe.
That's what was really great. I was there for a few days. I was paid the screen print that the mountain image was screen printed here in the UK and brought over. So, and it folds up really small. It fits in on how it arrived.
Yes.
It was kind of laid out when I arrived to the Gracia space to work, the warehouse. It was already laid out on the floor. Felt really big. And I was sitting on top of it and painting it. The ability to just arrive somewhere and have things facilitated for your making, that was just an amazing experience. And we spoke about the wooden structure and it was a really great experience to make it. And it's a project I've wanted to make for many years. They have its billboards for me in the region have always been very important. And thanks to Reem, got to bring it to life in the Public Art Biennial. Coming to Dubai and UAE, and then in our late 90s, we just had these billboards showing you what the future of the city was going to look like. And then the skyline was still flat, but all of the images on billboards was high-rise, basically selling real estate. So I thought that was a very interesting space to interact with, because that's just there in your imagination, percolating that this is where you want to be and that there is going to be a future here. So with this work, and our mirrors attached to make you think about the now, the present tense, an image of the landscape before it's been developed. There's interaction between those spaces.
And this work, like you say, the billboards in UAE were there because UAE has generally extremely large roads. Even that's the city center, but you had 4 lanes on each side. So it's quite a large road. So you had to have these giant billboards all over in the 90s, really. And did you feel that the space that I know we worked with you to choose this space. Were you happy with it? Did you think it really fitted in?
It's a very popular area, right? you look for Jollibee on, that before they find it, and there are many people around, and it's on a cross section. So you see it by car, you see it by walk pedestrian. Behind the sculpture, there was this, but there, this is what you don't know until you get to the place and you see, but there are already seats around, but it was meant to be used or felt. I don't know which was the most successful way to view the work, whether it was by car or by walking, but in my practice, I'm very interested in the speed. So the duration of taking the photograph where I've been, the dots on top of the picture have a certain speed in making. So in this work, you could also look at it at different speeds, driving past or walking or standing. So that I'm still actually thinking about all the things that happened that never made a work like this. I don't know, maybe 16 in space. And yeah, so that was very, and I'm still thinking about what that did for my thought process.
Yeah, certainly. And what we want to also show you, perhaps other works that we had commissioned, and then come back to our artists who are sitting here with us. I want to come back to Alia actually, and one of these works was commissioned for Manar, the first edition, and this was an interactive piece. And you talked about how successful it was with children specifically, and do you think public art has an opportunity to bring interaction among the communities and the public, and do you think it's very necessary as well?
Yeah, of course it does. It does. People are different in the way they use it, and some people are curious. Other people like habits, and they want to be, and near a certain artwork every morning after their walk, or people like to go play with their kids after work. So each person interacts with the art differently. Now, what was interesting with Constant Honor's piece is that it is an interactive piece in its nature, and it is a game, a simple game, where there are two players, and then after one another, the circle turns into white for the winner. But I was asking Karsten that, do we need to have sections, or that people need to know how to play this game? And he said, we don't want to tell people how to play the game, and they will find out. I was a bit skeptical because I thought, how are they going to find out? And I trust him, of course. It's not the first time he does it. So when I went there, I was with Clemence before the opening, and we saw this little girl playing under the spotlight. She was maybe 6 years old, and she was dancing, and she was there alone, and her parents were sitting on the bench as though they had a long day after work. And we were so happy to see how this magical moment was for this girl, and how we were so proud to look at her dance under the spotlight. And then when the exhibition opened, I went later on and saw that the kids who understood the game, and adults were playing with their kids too. So I asked one of the parents, and he said, I'm very happy I can fit into this, because usually it's a slide or a swing, and the father is quite tall. He said, now I can play with my kids. And this was really special. I enjoyed this, especially that it was based on Portish, and Portish would subject to the positioning of the woods work. It's a place where a lot of people connect in the evenings, and so it's quite successful positioning there.
And do you feel new technologies and new publics, actually, with the new generations and in the society where they're growing up today, do you think that helps better for interaction? Immersion, definitely, but interaction with an artwork.
Yes, and some people like, digital technologies, others don't. But I find that in the UAE, a lot of people are used to technology. You see it everywhere in the world, any public space. And it's nice how it's integrated within public spaces in a very natural way, without, intimidating the public to, do something that's too complicated or requires a lot of steps to do. So the important thing is actually that you can enjoy the art when you're commuting or when you choose to sit there. So it's not something that's forced or like, I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah. And Shazad, actually, you were commissioned as well a playground for children back in 2022.
I think it was delivered in 22.
22, there you go.
Quite a while in the making.
Yeah. I'm trying to find images here. I don't know what's happening, unfortunately. I don't know. There is sorry. It's not showing, but perhaps, yes, well, we have that. But perhaps you can talk about a playground, because that's quite interesting as a public art intervention, right? How did you think, first of all, the children, because it's mainly a work for children, right? And how did you want this interaction, really?
Well, it's a nice way to pick up on this whole idea of interaction and engagement. I think there's something about exploring a site. I know, like, Alia, myself, and Reem explored so many positions in Abu Dhabi, and everywhere you're trying to sort of find that perfect spot, and it might not exist. So this was, it's gone to something else. Interesting.
Sorry.
But doing a playground, I mean, let's wing it. I'd always wanted to make a playground. I was a huge fan of Isamu Noguchi's playgrounds from when I was, a young art student. So when the possibility came to make my own playground, I mean, again, I was obsessive. It was 3 years kind of thinking about it. I have kids, so there was an added responsibility, but also an inbuilt focus group. So, it was thinking of, and for that playground, I was thinking it was for Doha, and we were thinking about modernist architecture that was about independence, because it's a really important moment, but sometimes with the rush of the new, we forget these sort of really important moments. And so it was this mix of doing lots of research on the ground, but also thinking about how children inhabit their built environment, but how actually, if you think through children, maybe you give a gift back to adults. So one of the things I spent a lot of time doing was observing children in scale. And I could see where playgrounds didn't work because they ran out. And so what we did was we upscaled every object in the playground. So if this is a normal playground object, in the back, this is a normal playground object, we made them this much bigger. So they were about 150% the size of a normal play object. And what's happened is, the obsession kind of pays off because it's still crowded with kids every day, because it's the scale that they can not only feel it's their own city, but it relates to the city around them. And interestingly, one of the things we did with scale was to think, if a kid is this big related to the play object, we tried to keep it in the proportion of the adults, the buildings, the play objects referenced. So there was this whole wonderful thing where adults could come in, and while watching their kids, they could actually see sight lines to some of the buildings referenced. And it became this like wonderful kind of circle that kept coming back on itself and enlivening the site.
Perfect. And I think your children inaugurated the playground with you, right?
That was a very nice invitation where, they said, why don't you bring your children to inaugurate the playground? And it had been, while we were testing it, they said, will we get to be first on your playground? I said, I don't know. But,
and Radhika, would you do another public artwork? And I know this is one of your largest one. Like, is there any project, or is there any new project you're thinking about, or is that really changed in a way, or give a new direction to your practice?
I have plenty of ideas. I have worked in public space before in this project.
Yep.
I hadn't found the space yet to bring life to my ideas I have. I want to do a lot of things in landscape. And I have some, I did like it. So it's something about an artwork existing in nature which changes it so much, because a lot of my work comes from images taken in the landscape. So it's only so much you can do living as a painting or as in a solid face. And I think specifically, I think a lot, even if we're constructing an exhibition at an exhibition site, the painting kind of arrives in the exhibition and it's placed within it. So in the studio, they live as characters about to come to life. So it would only make sense to do that again in the landscape.
And do you feel that as an artist, of course, like you have to negotiate the expectations of a city or an institution commissioning you to bring a meaningful work in a public space, for instance?
Well, for this one, I think because this idea had been so long percolating, and the feedback from all of you when we were talking about it, and it just felt right. So I thought this felt like it's good to be. I mean, I was happy to make it. It made sense. I work so much on impulse, and so it's if it feels right, I generally feel it's okay to do. But I then go concept big to
We all do.
yeah, if the impulse is really strong, then I feel like it would be the best reason to do it.
For sure, yeah. Shazad, I think your playground is on images, made it to the screen. Thank you very much for that. I know you wanted to
research and
some of the images.
Is your daughter?
That's my daughter in one of them, yeah, at the opening.
This one, yeah, it's great photo. And coming back to another artwork that we have commissioned and acquired for the Public Art Biennial is an artwork by Wala Nawar, an architect, in fact, who also exhibited in Venice in the UAE pavilion. Alia, can you tell us a bit about this work and then how environmental problematics and questions can be brought into life through public art, and also thinking about permanence of artworks through their material, the lifespan of material, and how is this, in your opinion, important to think about when we commission public art?
This piece that started, as you mentioned, in the architecture biennial, that's won the Golden Lion for its multifaceted, importance in regards to environment, but also in regards to the landscape of the UAE. So this is inspired by the workland, where Abuظbي, before naming Abuظbي, it was called salt. So salt is referencing this specific subculture and creates a lot of resources for architects like himself wanted to do research about new materials to be used in different architectural projects. And this is specifically a modular dome, which took inspiration from the first piece that was in Venice. And it was made 100% from recycled material, and this made in Taiwan in collaboration with with the
Mini waves.
sorry. And it's a beautiful piece as well that creates, at the same time, it's important to note all the research behind the work, but also important to remember that we are in the public FN, and that we want everyone to enjoy the work and be able to, be under the dome. These are also seating materials you can climb, obviously, but and make very. And now it's moving to another piece because we decided that this is one of the pieces that people really enjoy. I think it's highly good for us as a department to test out these artworks and see how people interact with them and how they, withstand the weather. Of course, there's the sea that's humidity. There's so many other aspects to it. Why did an architect, so I'm the curator.
So we are relocating it to the Natural History Museum of Abuظbي, opening end of November, I believe. So you'll be able to see it there. Most importantly, is also for offering shading, and in a country, a city like Abuظbي, it's really nice to have some shade and wherever we can walk and whenever we can walk.
Also, there are pieces that change with the light, with the time, like some reflective works, like, for example, the initial board, Chicago, or elsewhere, you can see the artwork change. So here, this artwork really changes, significantly.
Yeah.
Because the material is quite see-through. And you see the top of the dome doesn't have the palm tree fibers inside.
Yeah.
Just something to know.
So we have to wrap up, but before we do, I wanted to tell you all about our next event, which is the second edition of Manar. So every year in November, if you pass by Abu Dhabi, we have either the biennial or Manar. This year is the second edition of Manar. Alia is co-curating with the artistic director Kai Hori, a Singaporean curator. We're opening in multiple locations, and you will be able to see all the locations from the 15th of November. And Alia, perhaps you can just say a few words about it.
So I'm co-curating this exhibition with Mia Sayed, and also Kai Hori comes from a background in Singapore where we found a lot of common things between us. And the theme of this year's exhibition is navigation. Navigation is very important in the history of the Gulf for people who travel through seas and who move through distances in the deserts without having the means of wayfinding, except for the astrological science of looking at the stars and looking at the times of the moon and everything that would help all people navigate into, whether it was through seas or through the desert. So this inspiration kind of connected with all of us, and the artworks also talk about in all their different forms, because we have some sculptural work, some interactive works. A lot of works also, are works based on artificial intelligence. And so there are different artworks of different types, but they all connect together in the beautiful setting of Abu Dhabi. And they are set in three locations, being in Jebel Ali in Abu Dhabi, near one of the largest mangroves forests. And then the other location is Lootah at the Genie Oasis, and on the UNESCO protected side that protects the palm trees and farms in the oasis, as well as all the historic buildings that are within the same area. And we're happy to welcome you all in November up until the 4th of January in both Alain and
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. And I don't know if we do questions. I'm not sure. No. But please come and talk to us. We're here just after the panel. But, we could. Okay. I don't know if anyone has any question for the panel. Yeah.
Yeah. My question would be, really correctly. My first trip to development, essentially, was earlier this year with the next type in their show. Ellsworth and Kelly did really is the first time that we've seen Ellsworth and Kelly intimately.
Sure.
How does your job as a public art convener find that blend between and having the flair of the Middle East and that all heritage while also blending Western artists, especially modern Western artists?
So in the Middle East in particular is really a cosmopolitan society. You have many nationalities, how many, easily in a meeting room we can end up with 10 different nationalities. And so I don't think there is a disconnect, I would say, between Western artists. In fact, a lot of them could be very inspired by the region and vice versa, of course. But we personally find it quite easy. International artists are extremely happy to participate, especially for public art projects, because the communities and all the communities represented in Abu Dhabi is very specific to that region, sometimes to that specific city, of course. And artists really like working in those conditions actually, and with those communities. It's a great way. I mean, I'm sure both Shazad and Ralik have done it, and I'm sure it has been really interesting for you both, right?
Well, in a way, I think, once you start a dialogue, it's really beautiful when it continues. And, I think the dialogue that I had with the whole team in Abu Dhabi, and audiences and the public, has invited me, they've all invited me back.
Yes.
So I'm actually moving from the public domain inside. So I'm doing a mid-career retrospective at the Cultural Foundation, combining my, all my work on architecture and ecology projects I've done around the globe. And it's a nice way to beautifully reconnect with audiences and continue the conversation there.
Yeah. But to answer your question about modern Western artists, we have the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi opening next year as well, which, I don't know, they don't collect necessarily modern artists, but we could also acquire artworks, part of the collections of Abu Dhabi, and the national collections could have in Western modern artists. So I don't see how, this would...
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah. And I think that, with different forms of art and in terms of architecture, in the lives of the modern city or the modern Emirates within the UAE, let's say in the 80s, there were a lot of commissions for European, even Arab architects, Iraqi, Egyptian, French. So it was a belief that, wanted to have the best. And so if there is an artist who is the best at a certain thing, we're happy to show that, regardless of where they come from and which period they belong to.
I think we're going to stop here, but thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.